What's going on, Scalpx Legends? Happy Monday, happy new start to a new month. Insane price action on a Sunday going into the start of the week. I typically like to see these moves because typically when we have big pushes in either direction, we typically start to see the opposite as we get closer into the later parts of the week and later parts of the month. So I'm going to look at this from a weekly perspective, being that we're in a new week. Coupled with that, I'm going to go down to lower time frame. So let's dive into the weekly first. One idea that I was looking at as I'm looking at some of these spider lines, you can see like these blue rays where we've had some pretty good support here in these areas before we just now violated it. We violated early in this year around March, and then we climbed right back above it, and then we started finding some support in that area. And I think there's going to be a revisit here in that area relatively soon. Sometime this week, we should be seeing that. Now, we did test it already when we had that push down to 26.23, but ultimately for a double bottom for short-term relief. Now for this setup phase to adjust, for this to truly become bullish, I need to go 4 candles back. So we need to look at 1, 2, 3, and then 4. We need to close above this level. That might be a little bit of a stretch, so we're looking into possibly next week, meaning we're going to be floating around in these areas. Maybe we get up to this 28.73, maybe even ultimately come right back down. I would say maybe the next following week, counting 4 back, 1, 2, 3, 4. This seems a little bit more realistic. 31.23 in these areas, 23 down to around that's kind of we were looking at the other day as far as price action goes. Just tapped right into those levels just underneath that. So I think those levels are going to be a little bit easier for price action to climb above to change this setup phase from a TD9 sequential count. Now, if I come over here to a daily, one idea that we were looking at a bearish count. I do have a long that I'm preparing for a limit order here inside this area. We had some previous TD9 sequential levels that are over here. Coupled with that, with the spider line that I was just sharing with you now, I'm bleeding this over to a daily. But I'm going to throw back on that bearish count idea that we were discussing at one point. Let me take off some of this noise for us, so we can see this a little bit easier. Now, honestly, I can't explain the move as to why we moved so aggressively to the downside outside of this just being a wave 2, and I'll show you that on lower time frames. But there's no fundamental news. Really wasn't a strong resistance level at the levels that we went to, the 3097 benchmark. There really wasn't a lot of here for us to see why we have such a massive push down. In my opinion, I think one of the reasons why we do have a massive push down is because we didn't have a buyer wall to catch this fall. It was just not buying this area. They're ultimately waiting for lower. Now, money men, or at least big players in the market, one of the goals that they would want to create is capitulation, and that would put us sweeping this low, coming to this level, and then having the same type of stagnant price action. Stagnant is something like this, where we're just ultimately just kind of sideways, right? So if I go back over to a daily, you could be seeing something like that in the days to come, because remember what I was saying, on a weekly, we want to see the next following week be able to recover this level right over here to change the setup phase. If that occurs, then yes, we are going to be seeing some bullish momentum. This is going to be short-term bullish momentum, ultimately bearish retest. I still believe that these levels are going to be the bigger levels for a swing in the event that we're going to be looking for shorts. 38 up to around 36.89. This being a wave 4s are complex, meaning they can have push ups and then come right back down and then push ups again, ultimately retracing on both sides. Now, if I look at this on a slightly lower time frame, I'm going to look at an 89-minute for us. And some of you guys may or may not have a 89 minutes, so I'll just go ahead and put on a 1 hour. And really what I'm looking at is I'm looking at this move up to the upside being a wave 1, and this retracement down being a wave 2. Now, we do have some lower levels that we could potentially be targeting somewhere inside of these levels, which is right at 26.58, right around here. This is why I was calling for that long. So as long as we don't retrace beyond this origins right over here, as long as we don't retrace below that, then the wave count, or at least the wave thesis, would be valid. So I'm stretching a little bit lower here, saying, okay, we're probably going to go for like an 88% benchmark, 88% of this move, which is normal ETH behaviors. It typically retraces a good amount of its pumps. So I'm looking at these levels for a wave 2, and ultimately wave 3 would put us right around like 91. I have it at a bare minimum, or a 1.618, puts us right over here inside of these levels, right over here. That's what I'm looking at. Then, wave 4 coming back down, revisiting these areas, ultimately probably coming back and retesting the peak of wave 1. And then a wave 5 would potentially put us in the 3400s inside of these levels. You're checking out my corner. I did post some ideas, and I also did post some inside of the war chat room. Right now, it's just one of those moments just to remain diligent. I'm looking at daily. I'm looking at candle. I'm looking at candle temperatures for us. One of the ideas that I'm looking at is going to be the heat maps, because I want to see if we're in a cool down, and we are in a massive cool down on a daily. If I float down to lower time frames, like a 450, we're still a little bit lukewarm, if you will, here, but we're still getting cool inside of this area. So I want to see something like this occur over here. Now, one thing I did notice was that we do have a 6 and a 7, and the 8 and 9 are deeper in that level. If I come over to like a 610, that kind of changes, right? So we do have a 6 and a 7 that are deeper than the 8 and 9. So it would make sense if we do get a wick that comes down into these levels. And again, the 2658 area would make more sense. It would complete this TD9 sequential as far as the 9 in the sense of creating balance. And if we go over to an 89 minute, we kind of opposite over here, right? We have nice cool down, but if we look to the upside, we have a 7 that's higher than an 8 and 9. So there's going to be a magnet that's going to pull us into these areas at some point. Obviously, we have a pretty thick fair value gap here for us to clear. I think there's more liquidity to collect to the upside to get to these levels, which ultimately doesn't mean that we're in a full bull run. It just means that we're going to have a nice, decent bearish retest. So that's some of the thoughts that I'm looking at right now. I'll try to keep you guys abreast as far as how the moves and how they play out through the remainder of the week. We do have class on Thursday. If there's anything in particular that you're struggling with or that you want to dive into deeper, please feel free to shoot me a DM or tag me inside of the war room. I'll make sure it gets on the agenda for you guys. Outside of that, be safe this week. Don't full port. We have a lot of time. It's a new month. We have plenty of time before the end of the month for us to find these bottoms and find positions to where we can long, and then be profitable at the end of the day. Above all, God bless you guys. I'll catch you soon. Peace.